Yeah, this is quite confusing, isn't it? I mean, the fact that you implicitly implement the controller like this, I don't know, it just look odd to me. Hi guys, so I've been working with Golang for a little bit, so I just wanted to do something a little bit different and show you the perspective of a Java developer approaching Golang. And obviously this is my perspective. So I found Golang to be pretty good, to be honest. There are some things that I don't particularly like, so I just wanted to share those with you and see what you think as well. The first thing that I'm gonna do is, for example, I'm just gonna show you that I already installed Go and I'm working with version 1.16.2. And Golang is really easy to get started. You can create an application with the module called Go mod init, and then we give it the application name. We say hello world, for example. So it created already a hello world module for us, and we can see there is the Go mod in there. So what I'm going to do is open this with VS Code, and in here you see that basically the module is like my application name, and then you just say Go 1.16 is the version that I'm using. All I want to do now is create a main file. It's going to be like a main.go file, and in this main.go, the first thing that we have to declare is the package, which you have to have a main package, and the function for the main package is going to be just called main. So essentially, this is all it. As you can see, one good thing about VS Code is that it seems to recognize the syntax straight away. I didn't install any extension. I don't think I have, to be honest. And just to show you how this plays well with VS Code, I'm gonna just use the FMT library, which is like the standard library for formatting strings, and I'm gonna say print line hello. And you see up here, he's already imported the FMT library for me. So all I need to do now is I just have to run go run main.go, and that's it. It's just that simple. Honestly, is so nice in the sense. If you wanted to build this, what we're gonna do, we have to basically copy the module name, and we can compile it as well so that it can be like a single executable, and I'll show you why. So if you do go build and then you give it the package name, go build hello world, because that has too much. What it's gonna do, you see here, you created this executable, so I can just call it like that, and that's just my application. And obviously this is gonna be tiny. I mean, how big is it? 1.9 megabyte. That's what it is. So it is really simple to get started, and I'm gonna show you a few things that I found coming from obviously a Java background. There are a few things you can do. I mean, Go is a strongly typed language, so there are a few little things that you can do. There is not much syntactic sugar to Golang, I found. What I can show you is actually, let's take this out. What I'm going to show you is if I create a variable, like a string variable for message, and I'm going to say message is of type string, and I say hello. This is already complaining because it says I declared this variable but I never used it. So until I use it, it's gonna complain. So now it's gonna be fine. Obviously, if I rerun the main, this works. But there is another way you can do this. This looks a bit more like Java, doesn't it? But obviously, if you want it to be more concise, you could just say message hello. So this is the like the implicit way of declaring variables, and it's nice, it's fine. So obviously this one works the same. We can display the type as well. I think it's format T. Let's have a look. Yeah, so I'm not sure why it's complaining now, but obviously it's saying that it's getting a string, but it's formatting something else. So in this case, we are printing a type. So let's see something a bit more interesting. For example, how do you import libraries? I found that many libraries from the project I've been looking at are referenced in as GitHub libraries. This is just one example, like gin gonic, not gin tonic, but gin gonic, the web framework. So this seems to be pretty widely adopted, and all you need to do to import it is just do this go get -u and the GitHub path. So if I do that, look what happened. Bang, all the libraries that I need are gonna be imported in the require module. So this is my module. It looks a bit like it looks more like Gradle, doesn't it? So obviously I got all my libraries in here. Many of them are referencing github.com projects, which for a Java developer it looks a bit unusual, because typically if you're using something from GitHub instead of Maven Central, let's say, it looks a bit dodgy, doesn't it? It's like a library that usually is not supported, but it seems to be uh, quite widely accepted in the Go project that I've been looking at specifically. I don't think there are strong patterns defined as yet, but just the observation that I found are those. For example, let's have a look at something else, like how do you import stuff from another library. Let's just create a controller, yeah? Let's just create a controller. So if I copy this this function, what we're gonna see is that Gin is our server. Is gonna stand up an endpoint at the ping uh, path, and also by default is going to point at 8080. So if I go run main.go, you're going to see that my server starts in here, and I can obviously do a curl on localhost 8080 slash ping, and you see the message here, and that's all good for now. Now let me show you what happened when we start refactoring this. So we're going to introduce two other nice things. So instead of calling it service, let's call it controller. Yeah, and then in here we are going to create well, a controller.go file, and in here I'm going to use this that I already created from before. So we're going to create this health endpoint, and what we're going to do here, instead of using this, we're going to create the controller. So in here, in able to be using this controller, I'm just gonna say health controller is of type health controller. In here we need to import the hello world slash controller. So this is gonna be my module that is contained in here. So I can call controller dot, why is it not finding it? Oh yeah, I found out. So the reason is because basically I'm importing the controller here, and if controller doesn't know what it is, so I have to reference it like this. Basically I have to give it the package name. So once I've done that, right, so I think I fixed it, but essentially I forgot to use the var keyword. Well, what I wanted to show you is that actually the import doesn't have to be line by line, but you can use these brackets in here, and it's going to be formatted automatically. I don't understand what's the deal with this space in here, the new line, sorry, but it seems to be maybe that the third-party libraries are going to be added to the end. I'm not sure entirely, because it seems like it brought this package, the controller package up here. So possibly that's what it's doing. We are just guessing at this stage. And then what we're going to do, instead of having our function here that does something, that returns something, we are actually calling the health controller get health method. So here we introduce quite a few things all of a sudden. Let me show you what happens here. So in the health controller dot get health, well, in the health controller itself, here we are referencing health controller, which is, let's split the screen in here. The health controller is an interface. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. As a Java developer, I don't particularly like the way the syntax of the interface and the implementation is done. Actually, this is something I've been fiddling with a little bit to make it look more like Java. This is not exactly the way, let's say, Golang developer were doing this. What I saw is that basically instead of classes you have structures. Yeah. So this is your like structure that implements the interface health controller. Another way we could see this maybe, so the interface tell you that there is a get health method, and the get health method is implicitly implemented in here. So usually what I saw is that the interface and the implementation are both in the same file, but that doesn't need to be. Essentially this is just easier to look at for most of the cases that I saw. So let's say you have an interface like the health controller, and you want to implement the get health method. You don't really have to have anything in this structure, but obviously we added the status, so it's going to print status OK when we hit that endpoint. And the way we actually do a controller, sorry, a constructor, I saw many were using this new prefix in front of the name. So this is actually is a public function. What is a public function? If I was doing this smaller case and I try to reference it, you will see that this is not going to be reachable. The Go compiler is going to realize it, say, what is that? You see, cannot refer to unexported name control new health controller. So if you uppercase this is automatically going to be like, let's say, public. So you're exporting this function to be used in another module, and this is the first thing that is I haven't seen before in other languages that I work with. So smaller case means it's kind of private in the Java world equivalent, and uppercase means it's public. And the other thing that I don't particularly like is the way you make basically the controller implements the health controller interface, and is like this is an implicit implementation. So obviously in Java you would have something like override whatever, and then override in here, and then you just define what you override, because you're saying something like probably implements health controller and so forth. So this is none of that in Golang. For what I could see, you do an implicit implementation by declaring a function that is essentially get health, implements get health, specifies get health on the on this structure. So this structure is gonna have the get health implementation from the health controller, and you can say, well, now I have a pointer to my health controller impulse, so I can return whatever I want. In here I could have had like a timestamp, for example, time string, or obviously you can use your own time libraries, and so you can return c.status or c.time. You see, I can see that now, but yeah, this is quite confusing, isn't it? I mean, the fact that you implicitly implement the controller like this, I don't know, it just look odd to me. And the other thing is, the fact that in Golang they tend to use all these single letter variables for single letters for variables is always been like is like a bad practice in the Java world specifically, because it's not clear what you're using. I don't know, for all those of you that read Clean Code by Uncle Bob specifically, there is an whole section about about the naming convention, and usually in Java what we just give it the full name like that with the small case syntax like that, so it's pretty clear and pretty readable. You just say, okay, this is my variable, I just return in the status of that. So one last example that I wanted to show you is this bit of code where we are looking again at interfaces, where actually we got a shape interface that declare an area function, and then we have our rectangle and circle structure, and those two actually implement the area in their own way. So you can see here it makes a bit more sense where we have actually the rectangle implementation of the area as such and the circle implementation of the area as such. Another thing to notice is that float 64 is kind of the big decimal equivalent in the Java world. So the way this works at the moment, if you do go run main.go, you can see obviously they both produce different output. How do we build an array? So for example, if we build an array or we say shapes, but actually I just do in the simpler way, shapes becomes an array of shape, and we can initialize it with R and C, which are our rectangle and our circle. What is it complaining about? It hasn't been, it's declared but not used. So we have our shapes array, and now the way we do the loop in here is for I equal 0, I minus less than the length of shapes, and then we increment I. So this is kind of the old-fashioned way. In Java, what we can do now is, let's say, get area of shapes of I. So this should work. I'm not 100% sure, but let's have a go. Yeah, so this still works. Let me show you the final tweak that we can do to this. There is a for range loop, which I believe is the syntax is for index and element in range of shapes, then do that, and then I think what we could do becomes just like that. For element is unused. Yeah, so this is the other way we can do it. So obviously this would work because we are taking shapes of the index, but really here, let me show you something pretty cool. We don't really need the index anymore. We're just referencing the element itself. So really what we can do is use the underscore, and underscore says just throw away that variable. We're not really interested in that. And the good thing about this is that actually when, for example, the function you're calling throws an exception and you don't really care about either of these parameters, for example, it could be the result and the exception, then you can just ignore one of the parameters that are returned. So in this case, let's just double check if this works. Yeah, that works and is absolutely fine. So that's another cool thing about Golang. And finally, if you wanted to learn more about getting production ready, there is this really good course that I found on Udemy. It's called the Backend Masterclass Golang, Postgres and Kubernetes. You go through quite a lot of things, from designing the database and actually comparing which type of library you should use for your CRUD Golang code, as well as writing unit tests, dealing with DB transactions. Also goes into how to write a RESTful HTTP JSON API, doing some authentication on the JWT token, and then also deploying the application to production, building the Docker image, pushing it to an ECR with GitHub Actions, and then this also being deployed on a Kubernetes cluster.
So it's really comprehensive course, and I found it to be an accessible price of £16, British pounds, and yeah, give it a go if you want to have a look. And I found Go to be really simple language to get started, but obviously things can get complicated really quickly. But let me know if you had experience with Golang. What do you think of it, and what do you think of the market in the meantime? Does this reflect the reality where you're at the moment, or do you think Java is still going strong in the backend? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks very much, and see you in the next video.